The next billion dirham idea might be in the head of the receptionist, and we're not creating an environment of safety for her to bring that out.
Interesting.
That's the weird thing about the recruitment game that we're in. It's a matchmaking game. It's more a chemistry and a vibe.
That whole saying, leave your stuff at the door is so antiquated. We're dealing with humans. Everybody is bringing their own things into the workplace. How do we bring that, celebrate it, and create this environment where everybody can play? You're actually giving people the space to show up as themselves.
Surely there should be a balance of what you do bring in to create a more performing environment.
I have this challenge and I don't actually know how to do it.
You can't know everything, can you?
But don't people trust you more because you overshare?
If we can come to terms with this idea that we're all incomplete and we're all needing to work on things, then it becomes this way of thinking, okay, then I'm going to go and ask for some help. I think we should draw a delineation between management and leadership.
Okay, let's do that.
Leaders push for change, managers manage complexity. You don't have to be in charge of people to be a leader.
Welcome to another episode of Chat GIG. Today we have Sam Harvey with us, founder of Braver Leaders, that talks all things performance in the workplace, from leaders to team environments to even your own self-performance. Very interesting nuggets throughout the whole conversation. Really looking forward to sharing this with you. Sam, lovely to have you here on the show. We're going to be talking all things performance, from leadership performance, team performance, and all the pressures we place on ourselves to perform better in the workplace. Awesome. Now, you've worked globally, seen a lot of different markets, now in the region. How does the region compare globally to workplace performance?
Interesting. I think it's very different. And there's a lot of pressure, which you've kind of alluded to, in this region to move very quickly. I think it does actually perform very well. But there's not a whole lot of focus on how we actually go about setting the right environment for performance, I don't think.
And how do we go about setting the right environment? Is that a company initiative, or is that a leadership perspective that needs to start in creating that environment?
Yeah, good question. I think it's a bit of both. Whenever we have any kind of change initiatives, there's an oscillation from the bottom and the top. Often they need to start at the top, and there needs to be a leader who's saying, well, I see this as a way to get performance. So it's a bit of a change of understanding of what performance might be. There's a school of thought out there which I don't think is practiced enough in the region, which is slowing down to speed up.
Interesting.
Is a really interesting way to start thinking. Well, I think it's interesting. I kind of nerd out on this stuff, but actually, there's a way to bring our performance down, and we've done this together in terms of thinking about how do we actually connect to then know that we've got each other's back, so that when performance starts and performance is needed, we can move very quickly. Okay,
and slowing down yourself before you slow down the team. Can you talk into what do you mean by slowing down?
There's a few different things. So to create the right environment for success, there needs to be this kind of environment of safety, which we've talked about, where you're actually giving people the space to show up as themselves and bring their ideas, their challenge. But you can't do that when there's super high pressure. So first and foremost, creating that place where people can bring their own ideas, as I say, and feel safe to show up as themselves.
And that's psychological safety. That's what, basically, in a nutshell, is that what it is?
Yeah, correct. It's those bringing of ideas. Rather, it's not coziness. It's candor. So I can come to work, be myself, say what I want to say to help the business and the team improve, and actually get my ideas out on the table. There's this real sort of thought that actually if we just keep moving quickly, things will happen. And there is a time and a place for that. But we need to create this environment, as I say, first, where people can bring their ideas, people can actually challenge ideas, because we all work in knowledge work now. We don't work in factories pulling levers anymore. We're not the Flintstones anymore, are we? We need to actually have the ability to come bring the ideas in our head, because the next billion dirham idea might be in the head of the receptionist, and we're not creating an environment of safety for her to bring that out, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course. Ahmed, when you're recruiting, especially leaders, is that one of the criteria to have a high-performing leader?
Yeah, I think the way that companies hire is, do I like you? Do I trust you? And then it's all the rest.
Okay.
That's the weird thing about the recruitment game that we're in. It's a matchmaking game. It's more a chemistry and a vibe.
Yeah.
Versus the experience, which matters, but that's what gets you in the door. It's not the reason you get hired.
And that's what they keep you there for? Because performance is such a buzzword, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what is performance to you in a nutshell?
Are you meeting the expectations of the stakeholders? I had it right there.
Yeah.
Are you learning and developing? And are you enjoying yourself? Would be
Expectations, learning and developing, and enjoying yourself.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've read loads of Simon Sinek, right? So empathetic leader, he's all about, so it's a bit like parenting would be his philosophies. And a lot of people would say he's a bit unrealistic because you made a point, you called it.
It's not being cozy, it is being candid.
It is being candid. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people would say that Simon Sinek might be on the side of a cozy style of leadership. And then you've got like Jensen Huang, the NVIDIA leader, who's all about, I don't do one-on-one catch-ups. I never catch up. He's got 57 direct reports. And he's like, go figure it out. Leave me alone. Pretty successful company. How does someone who's now suddenly got a team figure out what to do and what style of leadership to take?
Yeah, and NVIDIA is an interesting one though, isn't it? Because most of them are actually owners of the business. So that changes the mindset, doesn't it? So many of those employees now are all millionaires, which is an incredible thing, right? So he set that up very well for success. So it's about creating this environment where people can come and play and be their best selves in order to perform. What we see is these leaders showing up, and I'm going to answer the anti-question here for a second, showing up and saying, this is the way, this is the only way, there's zero flexibility, I'm not going to adapt my style whatsoever, and you must conform.
Okay.
However, we're dealing with humans, aren't we? At the end of the day, there's people who are going to bring their own way of being, their own problems from home. That whole saying, leave your stuff at the door, is so antiquated. We need to now think about the fact that everybody is bringing their own things into the workplace. How do we bring that, celebrate it, and create this environment where everybody can play? It's not an easy answer, and there's no one way to do it, but there is a way you can approach it, in my opinion, which is curiosity. And Pixar do a brilliant job of this. So they've got a very high-performing organization. If you look at the success of their movies over the last, 30 years or so, it's off the charts. They have a huge amount of number one movies or box office hits.
I love Pixar.
Yeah.
Who doesn't? Right? Like, who doesn't love Toy Story? Right?
Yeah, I know.
Or is that just me?
No, there's Cars too, right? Have I picked like the wrong one? Cars as well, right?
I think so.
Yeah, Cars is, yeah.
I don't know. I've never seen one.
I love Buzz Lightyear, so that's all.
Yeah, exactly. They have this situation. They do. Their whole thing is every movie we make is terrible to start with, and it's this posture of not knowing.
Okay.
So going and approaching something as a leader and saying, I'm not sure, but I need your help, because you can't know everything, can you? In the world of today, how could you possibly know? I mean, even in the old world where there wasn't, cell phones and billboards and all of this information being pinged at you every second, you can't podcasts. How can you know everything? You can't, right? So what we need to step into as leaders is this idea that we can't know everything. Therefore, I need your engagement. And invite engagement from those team members. And that's one of the first core tenets of creating a safe environment for people to bring their ideas, is say, I need your help. I need your ideas. Bring them.
And how transparent a leader's supposed to be? I mean, that's always a tough one, right? Like, are you meant to bring everything and be super vulnerable? They tell you to be vulnerable, but how much do you kind of spill onto your team that doesn't spill back over on you?
That's a really good question, and it hits on one of the key points in responding productively, because people are going to mess up, and so we need to respond to them in a productive manner, which creates a safe environment. And one of the sub points of responding productively is transparency. There's a model called the SCARF model by Dr. David Rock, which talks about status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. And fairness is about transparency. If we're as transparent as we can be, then with the organization, so this is talking about the specific intricacies of the organization, then it's going to help people understand that, you're telling me everything you can. Yeah. But you're talking, I think, specifically about how much of themselves does a leader bring into a role. Is that right?
Yeah, it's kind of both, I guess, transparency and also, how much if I was a leader.
How vulnerable are they?
How vulnerable, yeah. You say not to leave stuff at the door, but surely there should be a balance of what you do bring in to create a more performing environment.
Yeah, there's oversharing.
There's oversharing.
Isn't there?
So what's oversharing?
I overshare, for sure I do.
But don't people trust you more because you overshare?
I create an environment where people feel very safe with me, but it doesn't mean that everybody has to do that. And there's little micro vulnerabilities that people can bring in rather than telling their whole life story, because there might be something that's going on at home that you can't share, right? There are situations where it's like, actually, I can't talk about that right now. So what you want to do is, even saying, I don't know, what do you think, is vulnerable, isn't it? Especially with this idea that leaders have to have all of the answers. And if you have all of the answers, then you're putting a wall up and saying, I don't need your input. I've got everything sorted. Thanks very much. So just saying, I don't know, what do you think? Or, hey, I here's a situation that I really messed up. Can you help me with it? Or here's how I messed this up in the past. How would you handle this? So it's just showing that that posture of not knowing. One of my lecturers calls it that, and she was referring to a coach in particular. But it's so applicable to leadership. If we can walk into something and say, I don't have all the answers, it creates this place where people can kind of come and bring themselves and bring their ideas, doesn't it?
So most leaders, in most cases in corporates, are company representatives. So they'll have a boss, right? And the boss, generally, there'll be rules or policy around, you've got to go execute those things. And often as a leader of a group of people, a lot of those people don't like the rules. So what advice do you have around, do you do a them and us? Do you say, look, this is just how it is, in all companies, there's things you're just not going to like? Do you try and change the rules because 5 out of 10 people in your team are complaining? How do you navigate the company structure versus everyone's got their own way of working? That could be everything from flexible working to hours of working to just all the things that companies do, right? Because I have this challenge with lots of people on my team. I'm sure loads of people have this challenge, and I don't actually know how to do it.
So what's your challenge? Can I throw the question back?
So there'll be things that you need to do or ways of working, which work for some people but don't work for others.
Got it.
So then when you're trying to then have that, do you have one rule for all? Or in the moment that you're trying to sort of convince the person who doesn't like it, is it just, come on, do me a favor on this one. Don't give me a headache. Or is it, if you don't like it, go talk to my boss? Where do you, because the reason the boss has given you that task is to take it off their plate, right?
Yep.
So you go do the dirty work.
Yeah. Okay, so this is where we come back to the slow down to speed up.
Right.
So you could have a conversation with your team that says, I don't know how we're going to do this. This is what we need to achieve. You've all got different needs. How do we get there?
So it's a collective decision? Is that usually the route?
Co-creation.
Okay.
I need your opinions because I don't know how your lives run. How could you? You've got how many on your team?
17.
17. How could you? So you have 17 direct reports?
Yeah, it's not a great setup. I get it. I'm trying to create some layers.
So that's a lot, right? So you couldn't possibly, one-to-ones will be very difficult. You could spend your entire week doing one-to-ones. So you getting them together and saying, how do we want to live in this world is an incredibly vulnerable thing for you to do, but creates a situation where your team are saying, oh, he cares. I get a say in how we do things around here. And then we all get to agree. And when you agree, you create some form of charter or an agreement that says, this is how we do things around here. And then when people fall out of line with that, you can refer back to that and say, hey, we agreed on this. Does it need to change? Do we need to talk as a team? And they'll go, no, I screwed that up. Or actually, yes, maybe we do. It gives you this point of reflection. And I think there's a nice thing about that, isn't there, of kind of co-creating. And then once you've done that, then you can respond well to them when they do mess up. and there's an ability to really connect with them deeply and say, what's going on for you? You know, we agreed on this, something's changed, what's going on? That would be where I would start. So starting with that posture of, I don't have, and you said, I don't know how to do this.
Yeah.
That's a nice way to start, in my opinion.
You're very good at that. I think that's your superpower.
It's the truth.
Your transparency.
I haven't got a clue what I'm doing. We don't know what we're doing, right? I mean, that's the truth. Like you suddenly just end up as a manager.
Yeah,
and you're
that's
like,
true.
I've never managed people before.
Yeah.
What the hell am I doing? So, do I act like my old manager did? Because that's the only pattern of behavior I've experienced.
Yeah.
Was that good? It probably wasn't great because it was older methods, or leave your shit at the door, like you said.
Yeah, exactly. And there is, you will have been elevated to your position, I'm assuming, but I could be wrong.
Through my own performance.
Correct.
And then it's like, could bring those people in and can you go do the same with them? And
So
you're
you
like,
were elevated to your position because of your performance in a different function, or in the same function, but in
at
a
the
skill
job,
set.
at the job. So now you're saying,
So
now get
sales.
those people to do the job you did.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but I haven't done that before. I don't know how to do that.
That's different.
Yeah, that's a completely different set
And
of
that
skills.
is, I think about 85% of the world have never really had any manager or leadership training.
So should people get prepped before getting into leadership? Like how would you?
100%.
And should people say, yes, I want to be a leader and understand that? I mean, you'd be a great leader regardless. You're jumping into that role, honestly.
Thanks, Robin.
Even though you might.
Talk louder into the microphone, will you?
I'm talking so loud.
Sorry, just say that again. I think we should draw a delineation between management and leadership.
Okay, let's do that.
They're two different things. Leaders push for change, managers manage complexity.
Okay.
So a leader is going to, you don't have to be in charge of people to be a leader.
Yeah.
Often you end up being that way, but you can lead. Another way of putting it is leadership is a personality trait, management is a job title. So if people are in charge of people and you want to lead well and you want people to look to you, and I think most people who get into managerial positions want people to look to them and go, yeah, you're a good leader.
Yeah.
That is doing the right thing even when no one's looking, having a posture of not knowing and going, I'm not sure, how do we do this together? Helping people feel like they can show up and be themselves and creating that environment of success, which is kind of all of those three things put together.
But you can see how scary this is, right? You get given this job, you're suddenly visible to other people that look up to you for guidance. You haven't got a clue what you're doing.
No.
So then there's this defense of, I now need to flex to show that I know what I'm doing. So the behaviors get exaggerated.
Yep.
Because you're like, I need to fake it hard publicly. And that's why most managers probably aren't doing a great job, right?
There's women are better at this.
Why?
Can you say that again louder since we're doing repetition into the mic?
Why are women better at this?
The feminine is, so it's not all women, because men who have more feminine disposition are more likely to use affiliative and transformative leadership. So they will bring people together, they'll be democratic, they want to make sure that the environment is a good one. Purely from a disposition, men are more likely to use the pace setting or authoritative style, which is just, or masculine is more likely to do that because it's follow me. Mm-hmm. I'm purposeful, I'm driven, I'm directional. The masculine, this is taking an interesting turn, but I suppose I took it there as the masculine is driven by purpose, the feminine is driven by love. Mm-hmm. And so there's this different way of being there, isn't it? And I was doing a session on feedback the other day, and one of the things I said is, if you want some advice on this to the guys in the room, is go and ask your female counterparts.
Yeah.
How would they do it? And that's where this mentorship of, it's not just, okay, I have to figure this out on my own. So what would you do in a situation? There's so much richness in the organizations we have, and we think that we have to be perfect and figure it out on our own, but that's not the case. Is it? If we can come to terms with this idea that we're all incomplete and we're all needing to work on things, then it becomes this way of thinking, okay, then I'm going to go and ask for some help. And when you can approach things that way as a leader, it will help you as a manager.
That's super interesting. That feminine, masculine energy, I think that's a huge topic in general, because you see some women totally lean into the masculine.
Yes.
and they start to behave like men.
100%. We're a colleague of mine actually writing on this at the moment. And I'm so interested in it. Like,
is that bad? Is that good or bad or neither?
Why do they have to change? And I think that's the interesting thing is, why do they change? Is it because business is masculine and it's purposeful and directional and we must get targets? And I know exactly what you're talking about. I've worked for female leaders who were very purposeful and could be quite combative.
Yeah.
But then also, if a woman is or feminine is viewed as pushy, why is she viewed as pushy and rude
and abrasive?
Exactly.
Yeah, and
she's
emotional.
bossy or rude. Whereas if it was a man, it was that's just how it goes. Conversely, if a man is a little softer, there's something about him, I'm not quite sure of what's going on with him. If you know what I mean.
Yeah, but now that's being praised, because if a man is a lot more emotional, intelligent and nurturing, then they've kind of got both superpowers. But yeah, the female thing is a big one.
Yeah.
And I know in my career, so let's say I was told to be a lot more assertive. So that was one of the feedback growing up in terms of my opinion, because a lot of the time, you mentioned before, females were a lot more diplomatic. We try to kind of like nurture everyone, understand everyone. But then how do you get your opinion across in a more assertive manner without being rude and abrasive, but still stay in the feminine? So it was very difficult to manage without crossing that line of, just being real hardcore masculine. And I've worked under females that are like that, and it's not pleasant, And
that sounds exhausting to manage.
Yeah, it's not pleasant because you want the female to be female in her feminine. And I love when women are assertive, because stepping into that, they're still kind in their approach. But men, I think a lot of women learnt from men. I mean, I learnt from men. They were in senior roles before women were. So they gave us the space to kind of grow and learn that. So I love now that you said, why don't we just speak to each other and say, how would you do that?
Yeah, and understand as well the differing modes you can have as a leader, or the different styles, and that applies to all genders. So being coercive, authoritative, democratic, affiliative, pace-setting or coaching, there's this understanding of, I don't have to just do one. And the one I see in the region the most is pace-setting. I need it now.
I need it yesterday.
That's a Middle East thing, is it?
I don't know. It's a city thing. So cities are full of, I've got to get ahead. Yeah. If you go and hang out in London, which I do regularly, there's someone will walk at you to get to the tube, and if you don't move, they will just walk into you. It's quite interesting, really.
Really?
Yeah. London's a funny place. Same in New York. There's this...
It's like a rat race?
Rat race, yeah. You've heard that, haven't you? So there's this drive to be someone, get somewhere, I'm better, I'm faster, get out of my way kind of thing. And that comes from having a lot of industry in one place, I think. So it's not... but there's... here in particular, I've lived in both of the two I've just mentioned, New York and London. Here is faster, in my opinion. There's a real desire here, isn't there, to grow and be better and bigger and world's biggest, world's greatest, everything, right? World's biggest water park, world's biggest everything.
Yeah.
So that, I think, especially I read an article recently about how England should be worried about the drain of its youth to the UAE, because everybody's just coming here.
So interesting. Yeah. It's become a real hotspot.
Tax-free, your career growth, you can kind of make something of yourself, you can start a business and grow it, there's easy visas, that kind of thing.
And everyone's got a friend here right now, so it's much easier.
Everyone's got a friend, yeah.
Even I've got a friend here.
That's big.
You got two, Sam?
Two.
Pets don't count, okay?
Got it. Still just one.
One.
So when you go into companies now as part of Braver Leaders, do you see themes of like low-hanging fruit, excuse the pun, of just really common mistakes amongst leadership where you're like, if you just did these three things, you could really change your style of management or leadership, whichever you've been tasked to look after. Are there themes that you're seeing?
Yeah, for sure. So stop pretending like you know everything. And going into a situation, as we've talked about, with a bit of I don't know, what do you think? Stop pretending that you want to create the environment for success without understanding what it is. and stop moving so quickly. So slowing down a little bit and thinking, okay, what do I want to do and how do I want to set this up? One of the other things I see a lot of is the problems over there, go and fix them. The leaders will stay in their house, in their thrones and say, we need them to be better at this. And there's probably some truth in it. However, the symptoms come from the greater core, which is there isn't the environment for success set up. And leaders need to engage in those kinds of programs to get real buy-in. The thing I hear the most is, how come they're not here? And we're a bit of an upstart, Braver Leaders. I like that thought. We're a bit subversive. We'll go in and we'll work with, my clients will listen now and go, that's what you're doing. That we will go in and work with the core that they give us, and then we create their, we raise their awareness of what's going on. And often they will then go, right, we need to change this. And so it's about creating a bit of a groundswell to then go back to the leadership and say, why aren't you involved? And that's happened quite a few times here in particular.
What's their response?
It's interesting. It depends is the answer. I've had a couple of different responses. One that I actually had a really nice conversation with last week, stood there with her, and I use that word pointedly because then I'll tell you the other version. With her, and she said, I really want to embed this. How do we do it? Help us. The other one with him was, no, the problem's over there. Just keep doing that. So, yeah, differing responses.
Okay.
The gender thing is fascinating. Really is.
So how do we balance that? I mean, there's no answer, but is it just awareness, self-awareness that these are the masculine superpowers, these are the feminine superpowers, and how can we work better together?
Yeah, totally. I think awareness is the key. Knowledge is power, isn't it? So, but knowledge often, have you heard of it's a curve called the Dunning-Kruger curve? Peak of Mount Stupid, pit of doom or pit of despair and enlightenment. Yeah, so often these leaders have gotten to where they are through success in a certain type of role, sales, bringing in deals, that kind of thing. They're at the peak of Mount Stupid still, and they don't want to admit it because they don't get any feedback anymore because they're so high, and it's worked for me. Success is here, so why would I change? What got you here isn't going to get you there, and there is going to be a time where you reflect, hopefully not when you're 75, that says, oh, I could have done that better. Or I could have made people's careers more successful, or I could have helped people feel better around me, that kind of thing. Does that answer your question? Did I go on?
No, super interesting. Like, honestly, understanding the feedback loop and the self-awareness part. I wanted to dive into discipline, especially coming into the performance state from a sporting perspective. So you speak a lot about corporate athlete. I've heard you speak about that before. And the word performance, drips into also from an athletic perspective. What are elements we can take from the sporting world that we can bring into the corporate world?
Oh, such a good question. I love this stuff. Rest. So we don't rest.
That's a good one.
Growth day. It's not rest day, it's growth day. Same thing. So periodization from the world of sport. So when I was at the Sports Institute in New Zealand, I had to sprint, eat, sleep, go to the gym. It was awesome.
Sounds like a great life.
It was a great
sounds like
life.
a great life.
Any lifting?
Yeah, I was lifting. Yeah.
Because you didn't add that.
Well, go
Clearly,
to the gym.
Ahmed.
I'll go to the gym. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I heard sprint.
Gym's not a person.
Sorry. I've been doing it wrong. That's why I don't look like you. Got it now.
There was a key element of that was rest. And we go to work, and because we're not physically doing anything, we don't think we need to rest, but we really do. I have had a really busy couple of weeks. That said, I was with a client this morning, and she is, the hours they pull are insane. So my rest is pretty good compared to hers, but I still look at my week and go, okay, last week was really big, and then I had a big session on Monday. I've got to make sure I take some time out because I notice my sleep is being impacted a little bit. I'm not sleeping through the night quite as well. And I got to make sure I bring myself back so that I'm really resting very well.
That's so interesting because a lot of people treat rest as vacation days, right?
Totally.
They don't think about how do I reset in a week or reset maybe after a long day.
Yeah, I think it was Stephen Bartlett who said this, is my life changed when I started treating sleep as a professional activity. And I've started doing that. So I've got a great supplement stack for sleeping. I make sure that I'm Sally Duxfield, who's a good friend of mine. She talks a lot about sleep hygiene. They dimming your lights at night and not putting them dimmed overhead on the sides. So your brain's going, oh, it's sunset. Time to go to sleep, not having a bright situation, cool room, making sure that you're not watching a screen an hour before bed, you're not drinking 2 hours before, you're not eating 3 hours before. So there's all of these different things that you can really do to set your body up to sleep well. And then now that I know that, when I go, if I eat a big meal and go to bed, I feel terrible and I sleep terribly. So there's this kind of, rest is so important. Sleep is so important to us as individuals. And when you feel well rested, you're able to go into a situation and go, well, this is a bit curly. What do we do here? Rather than, I must figure this out, because you're more relaxed.
You're big on sleep, right, Ahmed?
Yeah, I am. And it's amazing. You've kicked off a corporate athlete and the first point is rest, and nobody would have gone there.
No one would have gone there.
Everyone would have gone about, drive for performance, squeezing results out of people,
Don't miss the layup.
Yeah, exactly, right?
And that's the thing.
Get your free
performance
throws.
is not what we think.
Yeah.
The performance happens often in our mind and in the quiet. Visualization is another thing would probably be the second thing I say, is actually practice in your mind will help you be perfect out there. So going into a big pitch, thinking it through in your head, what do I want to do and say? How do I want to come across? And having some key sayings that you walk in to. So whenever I'm doing a keynote, I say, stand up straight, smile, and look them in the eye. And that really helps me, right? yeah. Sit up straight, you two. These are very comfortable chairs.
Yeah,
Actually.
So that visualization, that sort of stuff helps. But performance is not what we think. Most of it is preparation and preparing ourselves for the performance. But now we're at work all day and having to perform all day is actually not realistic, is it?
But you're talking about rest in the context of fairly high-performing people, right? So these are people that are doing fairly well at their jobs. They're fairly capable. They're quite productive. So in the context of discipline, everyone's got a team. If you've got a big team, you're going to have some people that maybe they're not performing super well. So what's the remedy there? What do we do there?
They're resting too much?
Could be, right? Yeah. I mean,
it depends, doesn't it? Because depends what performance means to you. And I think having that conversation with your 17 people and saying, what does performance mean to you, would be a really interesting place to start.
Yeah.
It might take you a bit of time to get there, but what does performance look like to you? Then you've got this interesting discussion going on with everybody. It's like, well, this is what performance looks like to me. Okay. And until you know that, you can't address their performance needs. So the business has this need. We need to get here for the business to consider us performing. Yeah. I bet if you went and asked your boss, what else does performance look like? There'd be a set of other things, which probably include the well-being of the people. Yeah? Not just get the numbers. I know your boss. He's a nice man.
Really nice bloke.
Yeah.
Exactly. So he's probably going to say, yeah, I want to make sure that people feel good. I want to make sure that they can reach their own dreams, that sort of stuff. Asking those, then walking in and saying, this is the performance expectation from our company. What does it look like to you, and how do we achieve all of this?
We actually went through this exercise at the BAS over the last 6 months.
What's best?
Behaviors, attitudes, standards, and I don't know the other rest. But the purpose was exactly this. It was like an alignment session on figuring out how you want to work, what you want to get out of the company, what we need.
Yep.
And it was almost became this 2-3 hour therapy feedback loop that happened before there was a problem. Because generally those conversations happen on the way out. And it was And you could then immediately figure out, oh, that's why you're doing that. Oh, and it was so
it's refreshing.
It would just clear the air. So it's exactly what you're talking about. It was a structured way of saying, tell us what you want. How do you want to work?
Yeah.
What are your expectations?
It's an exploration, isn't it? And in cities, in Dubai, there's this constant play and exploit. So there's two modes we can kind of shift into and out of as a team and as leaders: is explore and exploit. Exploit is do the thing, exploit your assets. Explore is stop, think, strategize. How do we want to play? What's our direction and what's our reason for being here? Great, now we go back to exploit. But if you spend all your time here and never any here, you don't know how best to do things. So even just starting with that and saying, okay, we have to oscillate out of that and spend some time over here to figure out how best to do this. Again, one of my lecturers said this to me, is if you don't flick, it's the best way to be over here and drive straight into a brick wall. And nobody wants to do that.
So the exploration part, phenomenal. These are such amazing takeaways, Sam, honestly, especially the slowing down, particularly in this region. That was huge, which also kind of feeds back into the resting and being self-aware. And lots of nuggets on this masculine and feminine energy. Obviously, that's such another topic I'd love to dive into another time.
Cool.
But thank you so much for coming. It was awesome to really get all of your insights. And also you, Ahmed, being so vulnerable. I love it. You were just saying how that's one of the leadership traits people need to do more of.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for having me, and thanks for the discussion.
Thank you for listening to Chat GIG. Be sure to follow us on our socials, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. We have many interesting guests that you can learn from and also be entertained by. See you next time.